what happens, and it's preparing. Setting up your webinar for YouTube Live. And we are live, Matt.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Phifer. I'm with MattPhiferCoaching.com. I'm here in Dallas, Texas, here with Dr. Joan Samuels-Dennis and Dr. Kendra Flores-Carter out of California. And so I'm going to swing it around. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we will get going. Dr. Kendra, I'll kick it off with you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kendra Flores-Carter, and I am an assistant professor. I'm also the president of Postpartum Support International California chapter, as well as the co-chair of the Inland Empire Maternal Mental Health Collaborative in San Bernardino County and Riverside County. So, hi.
Hello.
And I'm Joan Samuels-Dennis, also known as Dr. Joan. I am in Brampton, Ontario, which is just north of Toronto, Canada. I am a psychotherapist, nurse psychotherapist, also an author and a speaker. I am the founder and the director of Becoming Canada. And our focus is on promoting the mental health of individuals and communities at large.
All right, Dr. Joan, I will kick it off with you. Let's talk about stats and what's going on in our part of the world. We are in three different, complete different sectors of the world, and I think that it's a variety of things going on with our parts of the country and our parts of the world. What's going on in Toronto?
Yeah, in Canada, we are now sitting at 33,000 cases altogether. And a total of about 1,500 deaths. Now, I am in Ontario, and so I'm gonna just take a look at the Ontario stats. Most of our cases are actually in Quebec, which has about 16,000 cases right now, and we are following not too far behind with about 11,000 cases. I think I'm about there. I'm not looking at exactly the stats, but that was the last time what I saw.
Awesome. How about you, Dr. Flores?
Yeah, so I am going over California statistics from the California Department of Public Health. As of this, I have here a total of 27,528 positive cases with 985 deaths, but this was as of 2 days ago. They haven't updated the site yet. And also I live in the county of San Bernardino, and we have a total of 1,096 cases with 55 deaths. For the state of California, I believe I heard on CNN today that we have passed the 1,000 mark as far as deaths concerned. So it is. So yeah, it's quite scary over here right now.
Here in Texas, and as a state, we are a little over 14,000. One of the things that one of the statistics that they've started to track is the amount of people that have recovered from it, which I actually think that is something that is a positive thing. I mean, we always look at the deaths, and I think over a period of time it's caused a lot of anxiety. But I think looking at the fact that over 2,500 people have recovered from it, it's obviously a good thing. And we've had 318 deaths. So with that being said, Texas as a state, we are top 10 in terms of people who have contracted COVID, but we are number 2 with the amount of people that have recovered from it. And before we actually went live, we were having a conversation about the balance. Where's the balance? Because at least here in the States, and I know it's very different in Canada, we've had this conversation of opening up the economy back up versus the amount of people, versus health. People social distancing, staying healthy, trying to keep the curve flat. And the argument, and I typically lean towards social distancing, people staying away, people staying out of work and keeping the economy closed. However, there's a very strong argument for opening the economy back up. And the reason why is that there are a lot of people who are at home who are suffering, and they're suffering more at home than they would be possibly going back to work. And the reason why is that they didn't have the resources. We have, I think the last number I saw is that Black people are dying at 4 times the rate of any other race. And the reason why is that they lack the resources. They're not able, they don't have the resources, the medicine. They live in food deserts. They don't have access to grocery stores. And they also have to, at a higher rate, need public transportation, which means that they are putting themselves at risk of contracting COVID. Um, they are working in service industries, which give them more access to contracting COVID, and then they lack the resources to be able to go to the hospitals because they don't have we have a lower rate of insured, and we also have a lower rate of and we also have a higher rate of people who are at higher risk of diabetes, heart attacks, high blood pressure, things of that nature. So we were
Yeah,
talking before, where's the balance?
yeah, and and this is where I have to ask the question, when are we as Black people going to get from under the, I don't know what you call this now, but we are always just on the bad end of the stick, right? We are always in a position where everything is just absolutely lethal for us. And at some point, though, we've got to move past the point of just surviving and trying to survive, right? And so I think, the interesting thing was Donald Trump opened up the conversation, and at a national level, he was having a conversation with our prime minister. And our prime minister, he tends to be a little bit, I don't know what you want to call him, he tends to treat us a little bit paternalistically. So he was like, well, I think, Donald Trump is just really kind of speaking, as he's approaching us with this, he's really just kind of saying that we have a special relationship. No, he wants production to happen again. He wants your economy to keep going again. And so he's trying to now get others on board with him so that, both economies can operate at the same time. Our premier, thank God for our premier. And what he had to say was, that's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen in Ontario. Yes, there needs to be people taken care of, but there's got to be a better way to take care of people than send them out into this tsunami that we call COVID-19. And we do have a very different approach to taking care of our population. So, we do have welfare, we do have OHIP, which pays for our healthcare. So if you go to the hospital, you're not, having this alarming bill. And for us as Canadians, we just have a different approach to life. Like, life is actually, to be protected. And so for us as a population, we're like, thank you, Premier, because you're speaking our language. We do not want to become more ill. We do not want to go back to work. We will suffer the consequence. We will just make sure that we stay hungry and survive this, as opposed to like launching ourselves back into these places. So I get what you're saying, Matt, but at the same time, I'm like, but you're in the midst of the wave. Why would you get into a canoe? As opposed to this big ship, why not just hunker down and stay safe? What do you guys have to say about that?
Dr. Kendra, I'll kick it off to you and then I'll answer.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely, as Matt said, there's definitely a need for us to think about the people that really need the resources. And unfortunately, I think in a situation like this, there is a lot of people of color, marginalized population, that lack a lot of the resources. And for me, what it has done is really have opened up my eyes to see the need for other sources of income with the household. Because if you're only dependent on one source of income when situations like this occur, this is when you can lose everything that you have worked hard for. And unfortunately, there's a situation where there is essential workers and non-essential workers. And so that's where the dynamic comes in. If you are the breadwinner in your home and your job is a non-essential work, then you're out of a job right now. And it's really difficult for you to maintain and, help your family with the resources that's needed. So I think for us, people of color, it's definitely important for us to start thinking about ways to further our education. This is an opportunity to probably say, you know what, I'm going to go back to school, get something that is really maybe essential, so that when things like this happen, I have a very good job that I could say, okay, I will continue to work during times like these. Thinking about maybe starting your own business and really thinking of ways that you can generate some additional income in order for when times like this, you have a savings that you can kind of fall back on. And I think we really need to be more forward thinking now, especially since this is kind of like a wake-up call. And my husband and I, we were talking about just how blessed we are to be able to work still during this crisis because we have essential jobs, right? I'm blessed that the institution that I work for was able to easily transition us to distance learning platform, virtual learning. And so we were able to make that transition. And, I'm happy for that. And it just makes me realize just how grateful we all need to be in situations like this to have jobs that are essential. But it also makes me realize that you never know what could happen. And for many people that are struggling, it's an opportunity to figure out, okay, moving forward, I need to make sure that I work to prepare myself for something like this if it ever happens again. And so,
the challenge is this is a pandemic. And, we're going to have one every 100 years. It's really challenging to prepare for something like this. And so in order to survive it and not only survive it, but thrive in the midst of it, we're going to have to, I think, as a people, just move from behind, like,
yes,
the race thing matters here in Canada too. But, our system is set up in a way that it supports people. And so there are situations when for sure you're going to walk into the hospital and you're not going to get the doctor who's going to, do all that he should. You're definitely going to have those situations. But the fact that we can still walk into a space and be cared for is important. And then the other thing is, we as a population are also already starting, at the lower part of the totem pole in terms of, health outcomes. So if we have all of those health issues that are part of our lives, then, then we're compromised. If we have food deserts, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? We cannot just sit around and say we have food deserts and not create something. Today, I sent out, I think it was a YouTube video, and it was like an overarching video just talking about how this virus truly just started. And it's high level, it's scientific, it's talking about augmentation of viruses, it's talking about engineered stuff. And I sent it out to a whole bunch of people. And people came back and they were actually arguing with me and basically saying, oh, well, that's not really what the issue is. The issue is, we as Black people were treated badly and it's still the belly aching. But what are we going to do about the problems that are sitting right in front of us? How are we going to liberate ourselves and come from under all of this? That's kind of where I'm sitting today, and very passionately kind of going, we got to do something to solve our own problems.
I think we definitely need to do something, but it will definitely take a collective effort. This is not going to be something that one of us can change. And I think for marginalized population, it will be a situation where we have to come together, work together to create better things for ourselves. And it means, you know, coming together to start a business, coming together to say that we're going to invest together to improve our neighborhoods, to make sure that we have what we need for our children. And we definitely need to do that because there's a need for it. Because you see, in times like these, we're so dependent on other people to help us. And we are also marginalized. So do they really want to open the doors to help Black people, right? And so I think there is definitely a bigger picture, and it should serve as a eye-opener to say, wait a minute, when things like this happen, if we have our own backs, we don't have to worry that much. But we got to come together collectively to make that change.
I agree. We have to come together collectively. And I also think that we need to do a better job of allowing our young entrepreneurs and allowing our young people to think outside the box. Think outside the box of, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to become a barber. To think outside the box of, if you want to be a woman entrepreneur, you need to be a hairdresser. And stop discouraging our children that if you go into certain sectors, if you decide to do this, that's what white people do. If you do this, that's what that race does. And stop holding ourselves back. You know, I live in the community I live in. I have a high population of Hispanics, and the majority of them are immigrants.
Right.
And however, there is not one single food desert. I don't lack for food whatsoever. There's multiple grocery stores, and all of them are independently owned. All of them are are owned by people who have come from nothing, who came from a country that, and I've talked to a lot of them, who literally have come from some of the, not only one of the poorest nations, but from some of the poorest cities in the poorest countries in the world, and have come here and not only have thrived, but you know, are doing really, and because going back to what you're talking about before, Dr. Kendra, is they've pulled together as a community. You know, they would come here, they would live together for a while, then they would move forward. They, you know, and you know, so for me, going back to what you were talking about, Dr. Joan, we don't have an excuse anymore. You know, we get, you know, I understand that we have been treated badly. I understand that we, you know, and that's not going to go away. There's going to be, we're going to, unfortunately, we're going to experience racism. And you guys know that I'm a relationship guy. You know, it's very similar to us going through a bad relationship and then saying that, like, we can't get into another relationship because every relationship is bad. Well,
Right.
are we going to, you know, are we going to continue to hold ourselves back because of bad experiences? I mean, that's, you know, we can either, and then the thing about it is that for us to use those excuses, we're also turning right around and expecting the same people that are treating us bad to be the one to take care of us. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know,
We're
and
both
we're saying,
agreeing on that, Dr. Kendra and I are
we're
agreeing with you completely.
you know, we're basically going back to our abusers, saying like, hey, like, take care of us. It doesn't work that way. You know,
And
either.
so what I want
But
to what Matt has to say is that, hey, you can be a barber, but own that barber shop, right?
Right.
You can be a hairstylist, but own that hair salon, because it's important, because when you have that, you have more, right?
And I'm not discouraging barbers, or my son wants to become a barber. What I mean, what I mean is that, like, when we have a child that has a passion for food, right? Instead of discouraging them to want to work in a grocery store and learn throughout the system because they want to own a grocery store one day, right? Instead of discouraging that, because us as parents, we you know, we want our kids to become doctors and lawyers, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But allowing for our children to develop their own passions, because as they're developing their passions, they may come back to the communities, develop these grocery stores, develop things that are outside the box of what we are typically going back to do.
Yeah, and and the other part of that, Matt, when we're in a toxic relationship, and we do have to think about this as a toxic relationship, right? When we think about these race relations, we have to think about the black-white relationship as one of those toxic relationships that we've had to look at really hard. And then as we move out of this place where that relationship, that toxic relationship is ending or in some way shifting and changing in these times, we don't enter into other relationships that are toxic. We begin to protect ourselves by being able to discern what is good and what is not good. And so we have to enter into a good relationship with ourselves first before we can go outward, right? And so we also have to be aware of what's happening in the world, right? The world is shifting. China is all over the map. China is the new colonizer of our age. And if we blink, it will be a new world, a new dawn, and there will be another relationship that is developing that puts us into another position where we're dependent, we're reliant, and it's the same thing if you're thinking about all the countries of the world have for the last 30, 40 years shipped production across the seas, and China has become that production hub. We've created codependent relationships. And what that has meant is that us at home have been without some of those jobs that have been shipped off. And basically, the Chinese population is working at 2 cents an hour. We have to start thinking at a humanitarian level where everybody deserves a good paying job, even the Chinese, right? And so just because something is cheap to do doesn't mean you create now one part of the world that dominates production. We need to haul those production back home. We need to start creating our own mask. In this pandemic, we're still going to China for the production of masks and those things when we are developed countries that can do this on our own. The madness of it all. Like, I'm just watching this and I'm going, why the codependence has been created in this way? And so part of this is not only a race thing, but it is a country level thing of just recognizing the codependence that we constantly are in as a humanity, right? And how do we shift that? And how does that come now to the Black person? Well, we have to start protecting ourselves. We have to start actually liking us so that we can start working together, so that we can start building together all of those things that's necessary for our survival. Am I making sense?
I think you're making sense, and I actually kind of I want to piggyback off something you just said, and then I'll transition to the next subject. I think it's not. I actually think that Black people, we do like each other, or we do like ourselves. I think the problem isn't that we don't like ourselves. The problem is we don't value ourselves. I think it's two different things. You can have a car that you like and love, but if you don't value it, you're not going to take care of it.
True.
And I think that we need to take that next step of liking ourselves. I think that we take a lot of pride in the fact that, we are creative. There are a lot of things that we're really good at, but I think that I don't think that we value ourselves to a point where we're taking care of ourselves, taking care of our communities, taking care of our families, and really taking it beyond even a sense of pride and having it as a sense of value, and really truly knowing what our value actually is.
Yeah.
And with that being said, with us talking about value, Dr. Kendra, you're talking earlier about the importance of having more than one source of income.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that that's kept a lot of other communities and a lot of other races not only alive, but it's something that it's a major reason as to to the reason why some communities are thriving versus the Black community is basically just surviving, and other communities are really just surviving at this moment versus thriving and really just making it through this pandemic and any emergency situation, really, for that matter. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, what I have to say is that I am definitely grateful. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came here when I was 14 years old, from Belize. I didn't, grow up with a gold spoon in my mouth. We
Right.
came, we went to South Central. My parents, we grew up in South Central LA. One of the things that I have to be grateful for was all of the mentors that I had. A lot of them were white mentors. And in all honesty, there is a black and white kind of shift, but I have to give credit to the mentors that I had for really pushing me, and really wanting me to achieve.
Right.
And so I don't want it to be where we kind of look and say, oh, all white people don't want us to succeed, because that is not the case. There are many, many white allies that we have that really and truly want to see us succeed.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for the ones that really supported me and pushed me to really realize, hey, Kendra, you want to be this person. You want to be an author. You want to get your doctorate. You want to create your own business. You want to be the top expert in your field, right? And encouraged me and pushed me to where I was able to see beyond South Central LA, right? And I think a lot of the times we get stuck in thinking that there's not other people that want to see us succeed, but there is. And for me, I think it's definitely important for us to listen and learn from people that really and truly are there for us, from people that really want to push us beyond because they see something inside of us. And so I just want to say that don't expect that the only people that are going to sometimes have your back are going to be people that look like you, because sometimes there's people that don't look like you that really are your biggest cheerleaders. And I have to be a voice for that because I have experienced that in so many ways. And I'm grateful for that experience, but I also know that a lot of my other sisters have not had that experience. They have had an experience where maybe a white person might have kind of undermined them, or maybe kind of not supported them. And it was because they were Black, right? And so it's important to also think about that. And I have had those experiences as well. But for the most part, I really have had positive experiences with my white allies really supporting and pushing me. And I think it's important for us to also collaborate with people like that who really want to push us forward, because sometimes they're the ones in the positions that could make things happen for us. And so really and truly making sure that we build those relationships, and also be mindful of those relationships on how those people who don't look like us but are on the level that can make changes to help us, that we really and truly pay attention to that and be open-minded to that as well, for us to be able to become more successful.
I agree 100%. I think that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think that it's important that just because we want to see Black people succeed doesn't mean that we want to see that we're anti-white or anti-working together, working, and I think, and I agree with you. I've had that experience as well, that, I've learned a lot from people in other communities, other cultures, and I don't think that I would experience the same level of success without them. I think that what's important is, regardless if the person or the community is safe or not, the important thing is that we learn how to thrive on our own, and it's even if someone else from another community is our mentor, it's that we're latching on for a time period, but we don't become what Dr. Joan was talking about, very dependent on them, where it's a partnership, not a dependency,
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
right. I think that's where the difference lies. Dr. Joan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm in complete agreement with both of you. and I'm in complete agreement with the capacity to protect ourselves. No, not only when it comes to COVID, but in every area of our lives, right? And so it was interesting. I saw this study the other day, and it was talking about speed of response. And what I look at speed of response as protection. This was a study done, and it was looking at the number of days that had passed between the third death caused by COVID-19 in each country. And this is a European study. So it was looking at things like the Czech Republic, all the way up to Italy. And so between the third death, as well as the implementation of measures like, and so first measure was all events are suspended, all schools are closed, non-essential shopping is shut down, non-essential movement is banned, land borders are closed, non-essential production stops. And that's kind of like, so, and it was tracking it from February 25th when the World Health Organization held a meeting, basically saying, now we have a pandemic. It moved all the way to March 25th, and it was just looking at the response. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 countries altogether. And half of those countries, including Greece, Poland, Sweden, Austria, Portugal, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, they shut down absolutely everything on day 0. So as soon as they knew about the third case, they shut everything down. Those are the countries that have survived and done well through this epidemic, or pandemic, I should say. Countries like Germany waited 8 days to shut down all the events, Belgium 2 days, and right up to Italy, which was 9 days. Now then, these countries had like the worst performance because it took the UK 14 days to actually close down schools, France 13 days, Italy 9 days, Spain 9 days. These are the ones that did the worst. And then for non-essential shopping, it was the same, so out of 14 days, that's when they started reacting. And then eventually Italy, it took Spain 23 days to close down production, and Italy 30 days to close down production. And we know that Italy was the hardest hit. France and Spain, those three were the hardest hit in this epidemic. So this is kind of like UK and its country. And what I'm suggesting is now this trickles down. It trickles down to states within countries. It trickles down to like cities within those countries, neighborhoods within cities, and all of these things. And then of course, it also trickles down to which families are willing to protect themselves, which families are responding on day 0, and which families are taking those 30 days, which families have never ceased to protect themselves, right? And I understand that some of us still have to go out and, you know, we want to work and we're essential to the whole marketing and the system. But for those of us who are able to shut down and protect ourselves, how many of us are willing to do that? And so when I saw people like still going out and voting in the US, and I'm looking at them and they're mostly Black people in the line to vote for a politician versus staying home and being safe. Or when I'm looking at people gathering to protest a lockdown or a shutdown of the system, and they are all huddled together, none of them are wearing masks. I'm asking myself, why are we so willing to go out and protest, but not actually willing to stay and protect ourselves? And where are we as Black people? You know, if we were to take that 30-day, where do we as Black people lie, you know, within those 30 days? And what is it that prevents us from responding? Is it the system? Or is it our own inability to actually take notice of how unsafe we are in this moment? Just a thought.
Dr. Kendra, do you have any thoughts?
I think that a lot of the times it's maybe a lack of education. Sometimes we don't know how serious things are, or if we go back to when this COVID first surfaced, if we go back to the very beginning, it was like, oh, it's not a Black people thing. It's, you know, it's not our thing. So that message got crossed You know, that message was in our community big, that it's not a Black thing, right? And now that we know more, which is really why evidence-based and research is so important, because now we know if you have diabetes and high blood pressure and, you know, chronic heart failure and significant medical issues, which we know plague the Black community significantly, then we know that, hey, this is it's gonna affect us the most, because
it's hard.
Really are more likely to suffer from diabetes, are more likely to suffer from hypertension, right? And chronic heart failure and things like that. We're the population that's most likely to have those types of chronic healthcare problems. So now it's like, okay, yeah, it is a big deal for us, right? And I think if that message would have came across initially, it probably would have been such a different approach from our people. And I think that's why education is definitely important.
Right. And so the question, you know, like from the get-go, we were like, it's immunocompromised people, right? But we didn't know the nitty-gritty details of exactly what that means. And now we know this means Black people because we're already suffering from those things naturally. We already have too much stress in our lives. This is the problem with us. And so now the banner is raised. These are the people that suffer the most. So what are we as a people going to do, right? Are we still going to go out there and continue working as the nurses that have these issues? So at what point do we say the people who are least at risk should be on the front lines? And all of you Black people who are at risk, get off the front lines, you know, go home, right? And stop putting yourself at risk. Like, at what point do we wake up and say, I don't want to die, I want to live, right? Like, at what point do you actually make that decision and say somebody else who is more likely to survive this, who is not even likely to be impacted like this, should be on the front lines, but not the Black nurses who are suffering with whatever ailments might actually put them at greater risk?
So our time is running out. So I'll give my thoughts on this, and then I'll send it over to you guys to kind of give your closing thoughts, closing remarks.
Yeah.
But I think that if anything that we can learn from this, and I'm going to extend this pandemic to other emergency situations that Black people have experienced. So I'm going to look at Katrina, you look at other hurricane issues, and tornado issues here in Texas, and even some of the health-related issues that we're talking about, diabetes, hypertension, and some of the financial issues that we talked about today. All of these situations that we're talking about, even the food deserts, all of them could be prevented if our community was more proactive. And if we took a step forward and we decided that we were going to take, when times are good and when times are better, if we would take initiative and we would do things before the emergency happened. If we took, when Katrina, we knew that the hurricane was coming. If we decided to evacuate before the hurricane hit, if we took care of ourselves before the pandemic hit, if we took care of our bodies, if we ate right before diabetes hit, we would be in we'd be in much better position if we would be more proactive than reactive. If we educated ourselves before COVID hit the States, before COVID hit Canada, if we knew that how it would affect our community before it came. I think that as a community, we're very, very reactive when we need to transition, in 2020 to being more proactive. So those are my thoughts. Those are my closing remarks. I'm Matthew Phifer. You can find me on mattphifercoaching.com. You can find me on Matt Phifer Coaching on Instagram and all other social media platforms. You can also listen to my podcast. It's Toxic to Triumph, and that is on all major podcast platforms. And Dr. Joan, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I am just looking forward to a shift. I think that's what I'm desiring and yearning in my heart, for that shift to come, and for us as a people to begin to just do this differently, for us as a community to just do it all differently, for us to look to the future, for us to see the dangers ahead and to start acting and preparing for those dangers. So I'm Joan Samuels-Dennis. You can find me at drjoan.ca. I am on Instagram at World Peace 2021. I'm also on LinkedIn, but you might have to search my name in order to find me.
Okay, I'm Dr. Kendra Flores-Carter. You can find me at Dr. Kendra Flores-Carter on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, the Janet Don't Cry Foundation, which is my foundation, my nonprofit. So you can definitely like my page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also on LinkedIn, and I am on Twitter as well. And you can also purchase my book. I'm an author. I just recently authored a book called Medical Social Work Practice, Christian Approach, and it's really Christ-centered social work practice in the healthcare system, but it also talks about all the different areas of working in healthcare and in the social work profession. So that's me. And, you know, I think my closing remarks would be that we really and truly try to work towards a collective effort to make the necessary changes so that we're able to survive when times like these happen.
Well done.
Right.
And I will make sure that on the YouTube channel, all of our contact information is there. You'll close off, Matt.
All right, thank you guys, and we will see you all next week.
See you next week.
Bye.